Hello friends and meisters, today we'll be discussing the previous two endings in 999. For simplicity's sake, we will dub the endings as the following, based on their logos, the coffin, axe, knife, and sub-ending. The one of the groovy Beatles music. Jokes aside, now you may ask, Roan, why are you doing this separately? Well, the main reason is I didn't want to spoil it for the people that watch my content blind, along with my playthrough, and there were plenty of friends and subscribers that did it with Danganronpa. It allows me to not spoil it for them, and to have their own thoughts on the matters. It's a large part of the enjoyment you get from watching visual mystery novels with killings in them anyways, in my opinion. Anyhow, before we get started, I will warn anyone who hasn't watched the previous 4 endings in my playthrough or played the game themselves. There will be spoilers with the coffin, axe, knife, and sub-endings. You have been warned. Now, as to not overburden you meisters with me talking pointlessly in a mic, well, that's my every video, but that's aside the point, we will be covering each individual separately, eliminating people from our list of suspects one by one, making things a little simpler. First, let's start with the 9th man. Well, Roan, what about the 9th man? Well, he's dead. The games give us no reason to believe he isn't, nor any facts to prove that he isn't. So he's just downright dead, and that's what we'll assume for all 4 of the endings. Now, speaking of people that are dead, let us talk about Snake. The interesting thing about him is that we got a lot of prevalent information from Clover in the coffin ending. The first piece of interesting information is that he was in a previous Notary game. Now I believe there's some reason behind that. What? We don't quite know yet, sadly. The second piece of information is that he had a prosthetic limb. Now Roan, why is this important? Well, it's the reason Clover didn't go to her manic rage in the first ending. And the only conclusion we can draw from that is that it wasn't Snake and he may still be alive somewhere. Now, reading further into the fact that Snake may still be alive, for our answer to this question, we need look no further than the end of the coffin playthrough. After Santa drags everyone through the door, or at least his choice people, we realize that someone's still stuck inside that coffin, trying desperately to get out, pounding with all their might. Now, if we assume Snake is alive, we have to figure out where he is. If you look at this ending, and the people present, along with the information Clover gave us, that we realize Snake isn't dead, it would make sense that he was locked within that coffin by someone. The killer maybe? Zero? We don't know who did it, but someone had locked him in that coffin. That would explain where he's been for the last 4 playthroughs. Now let's talk about our waifu June. Now I'll come out and clearly say it, I don't believe she could have done it. Not because she's our waifu, not because she's June, but mainly because in the first ending, or the knife ending that we got, it should have been physically impossible. June was with us up until right before we found Lotus's corpse. He split off just before those elevators. And not only that, she would have had to use the elevators, as we don't know any other quick way to get there, and that would have alerted Junpei to June's presence, making it kind of impossible. Now, next on that list of why June couldn't do it, looking at the 4th ending, she died in her arms. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. This very clearly makes it hard for June to be the killer, and hence I would eliminate her from their list as well. Now I'm going right along with June, since Junpei and June go hand in hand. I would also assume we would have eliminated Junpei from the list by now, for very obvious reasons, and we'll leave it at that. Next we shall discuss Clover. Now Clover, if we look at the previous information, more so the first and second endings, kind of interesting, because in the first one, when she found out her brother wasn't dead, there was no manic rage or killing from her. In the second, we would assume she didn't figure that out from what she was saying, and that would explain why she went into that rage, killing everyone. She wouldn't have cared anymore because her brother was that important to her, rather than a bunch of strangers who would. Now, looking at the 3rd ending, there's some interesting info here. Both Lotus and Seven tell us that Clover went missing while they were searching a room. Now, why would she do that? All we can assume is she still figured out her brother is alive. However, she would be unsure as to whether Seven or Santa were still involved and responsible for killing that other man, and still may want Snake dead. So it would make perfect sense to me as to why she would have went off on her own to search for her brother. Now, what happened to her? We don't know. Was she killed? Possibly. Did she get stuck somewhere? Maybe. Maybe she was locked somewhere by the killer as well, or Zero even. It's unfortunate, but we just don't have the information to figure that out. And in the 4th ending, we can confirm without a doubt that Clover is dead. We went even as far as to check her pulse, so that much we know for sure, without a doubt, of all those corpses, and thus with that information, and assuming that the same killer is involved in both cases, I would eliminate her from the list. Roan, what about your favorite Lotus? Alright, that bitch. Anyhow, I think this is pretty straightforward. Lotus was killed in both endings. In the third ending, we know she was stabbed and had her bracelet taken. In the ending following that one, we can again assume she was stabbed from what we're seeing here, and we found out that her bracelet was again taken. A strange coincidence, no? I think it has something to play into the story, and I'll go over my thoughts on that a little later in the video. Anyhow, I feel that eliminates her from our list. Now, the next people we talk about are a bit of a duo package. The reason for that being is they're a part of one of my initial theories. That would be Santa and Seven. Now, the main reason they're a part of one of my initial theories is their numbers added together, combined with Snake's, would have been enough to open the door, push Snake in, and allowed him to die, then later killing Lotus and using her bracelet to escape together. Now, to me that theory doesn't hold much water upon seeing the third and fourth endings. Why, you may ask? Well, Disembodied Voice, I'm glad you asked. The thing that bothers me the most is the way the killings happened. Why in the first ending would Santa betray Seven and then escape by bringing Lotus, Ace, and June with him, when he would have had a much safer, quicker, and easier way out simply going through the plan with Seven, assuming they had that plan? And then if that were the case, that kind of contradicts what he did in the coffin ending as well. Why would he save Lotus, Ace, and June, and then kill her in the third and fourth endings? To me, it just doesn't make any sense. All that being said, it just makes this duel very unlikely, and that is the information that we got from Seven himself when he recovered his memories in the fourth ending. The reason for that being is that he found out he was a cop chasing people involved in the nonary game, trying to save children. It was even part of one of their deaths, and even seemed very remorseful and guilty about it. If he were such a cold-hearted killer, why would he care so much about these children? Not only that would mean Seven would have had to somehow been responsible for all the deaths in the fourth and third ending. The fourth ending, we know he couldn't have done it. There wasn't any possible way, being as he was with us the whole time up until he himself was stabbed. And the same would go for Santa himself. So how? Why? These are the questions that don't add up, especially with the information we know about these two people. That being said, it makes it highly unlikely they would have worked together, and they would have had to work together to get a benefit from taking Lotus's bracelet in the third and fourth endings. Otherwise, thered be no point to it. So, we'll leave that discussion where it lies for now and re-examining at the end after we've looked at the other characters. Oh, I say it's time to talk about Coatman. Okay, Disembodied Voice, we'll talk about Coatman. Anyhow, Disembodied Voice was referring to Ace. Now, Ace is good and all, but he's an enigma, a mystery. We know little about him and his past, so there's no way we can use that as a judging point to how he might act. Not only that, he did do a seemingly good deed, and that would have been back when we were bickering about who would go through what door and who was going to be left behind. He brokered no argument, drugged himself, and fell asleep, so he had to go for the doors anyways. The interesting thing about that is he also loses the alibi for that time period. Other than the Ace's lack of alibi, there's no way to prove him directly to the case at the moment, or tie him directly to not being involved. That's why we'll leave him on the list, as such as a few other people we have here. Now, with all the characters being discussed, this is the perfect time to take a step back and look at the bigger picture, and piece together the information we have yet to discuss, and the info we have gathered. First, I want to look at this knife. Where did they get it? To me, the picture in the logo looks very similar to the one the ninth man carried. But Haroon, that's not the only knife. What about the one in the kitchen? 'Tis be true. Now the problem with that is, being part of the puzzle, after we use the knife that was in our possession, it disappears, so it wouldn't make sense that developers would implement that into the story. So I would assume, in this case, that the knife had to be taken by someone that went to the ninth man's room. Now let's look at who went through the ninth man's room in the third and fourth endings. In my playthroughs, I went for the kitchens both times, which meant that it was either Clover, Ace, Seven, or Snake that had the time and opportunity to snatch the knife. Now that being said, I also believe that the same killer snatched the ninth man's bracelet. That's the only other conclusion I can come to, as we did discredit the Seven Santa cooperation. And the rules did not say the person authenticating had to be alive, which is an awesome twist in what I think they're using here. Now it's high time we present our digital roots on the suspects. What we'll do here is we'll add each suspect's bracelet number to both the ninth man's and Lotus's. I feel the key here, as mentioned when we were talking about Lotus, is that the killer snatched her bracelet twice, so looking here we should see who benefits the most from doing that, assuming they also have the ninth man's bracelet. Now if we look here, there's only one person of these three that very clearly benefit from both Lotus's and the ninth man's bracelet, and that would be Ace. Now Meisters, let's take this even one step further. Assuming we discredited the 7 Santa theory of them pushing Snake through the third door, you have to find another way of doing so. If we look at Ace's bracelet number, combined with the ninth man's, combined with Snake's, he very well could have been another possibility and one who pushed him through the third door. Now that doesn't explain how Snake is still alive or how he ended up in the coffin. That's something I'm interested to find out about later, hopefully, as there's not enough information present to find out.
But Ron, what about the fourth ending? I thought he died.
Well, on first glance I thought he did too. That being said, what we'll do is examine the fourth ending in more detail. Let's disregard the numbers we've ran and information we've presented, and take a look at the bodies and entry wounds themselves. Start by taking a look at Clover. Here 7 confirms that she's dead for us by checking her pulse. Not only this, if we look upon Santa and Clover's bodies, you can see there's a flow of blood coming from the entry wound, creating or at least adding to said pool at the bottom of the stairs. Now what I want to do is disregard Ace for a second, look at the other deaths and entry wounds as well. When looking upon 7's corpse, we can see a very clear entry wound here as well. It was as if he got stabbed in the back. He turned around to face said attacker, had no energy left to fight, and slumped against the wall dying, creating that smear we see here. Lotus, we can confirm she's dead because her bracelet's missing. This means that her heartbeat has reached 0, as she didn't escape the ship. Even though we don't see a clear entry wound, we do see a lot more blood here, which is strange as there's only 2 corpses. However, from this we can see the entry wound for 7, and we can confirm that Lotus is indeed dead. Something similar can be said for Canny. We know she died in our arms, and that death would have transpired while both 7 and Lotus were being killed in the other room. This makes it impossible for Canny to be the killer. If this is the case, what does that mean? Who's the killer? We can confirm Canny's dead. Lotus is dead as well. We can see the entry wound on 7's body. Now, that means that one of those 3 laying there earlier have to still be alive, as Snake would still be locked within his coffin, and the ninth man would be dead. That means, looking at Clover's body, being that we confirm she has no pulse and she is dead, and that we can see Santa's entry wound very clearly from the flow of blood as well, that the most plausible would be Ace. This would explain the lack of blood and the strange blood splatter as well, as it very clearly doesn't expand beyond his back, which I found a little strange. Anyhow, I think we've blabbed enough. Let's finish this off Danganronpa style. The killing happened as such. From the information Snake read to us, Ace thought to himself that both the ninth man's bracelet and the knife may come in handy later, so he took those discreetly for himself. Following this, at a later time, he proceeded to push Snake through the door, utilizing his, the ninth man's, and Snake's bracelet to authenticate and open said door. Following this, Snake somehow ended up in the coffin. Next, what happened in the third ending is that Ace probably stalked Lotus until he found her in a suitable location to kill her away from prying eyes so that he wouldn't be discovered. Upon us finding the corpse, he was still down there, without a way out. However, we were still preoccupied with Lotus's corpse, so Ace took this opportunity to stab us in the back so that he could remain discreet, and then later proceed to safety through the ninth door without anyone ever being the wiser. Unless of course he may have killed everyone, but we don't know. In the following ending after that, the fourth ending, Ace would take an opportunity of everyone letting their guard down to take out Santa being the large threat of the 3. Following this, he would have went for Clover. Now, this was all before anyone had a chance to react. That means as soon as June saw this, she made a mad dash away to try to escape. This took up some of the killer's time. Eventually, however, being as Ace is both larger, faster, and most likely stronger, he caught up stabbing June. Now at this point, he probably heard us coming, talking, shouting, something, so the killer doubled back and lay down in that pool of blood to look as if he were dead. Now us, being in shock from seeing both Clover and Santa's body, we didn't take the time to also check Ace's, we just assumed he was dead. Moving on, we then found June's body. This kept Junpei's attention away from the others. At this point, the killer had time to double back, finding a perfect opportunity, with 7 being the largest threat. and his back to the killer seized upon this opportunity to take him down first. Afterwards, he would have finished off Lotus and then proceeded to hide. The main reason being for that is he never knew when Junpei would be coming back, nor would he have vision on Junpei either. Thus, going for the door would create a risk that the killer didn't want to take. So the killer, again, abided his time and waited for the perfect opportunity to pursue and strike. This soon presented itself when Junpei came into the room, examining the corpses. Afterwards, the killer would have followed him through the door, as to not alert him to his presence. From here, we were stalked silently, like a tiger closing in on its prey, and when we are at our most susceptible, taking advantage of the fact that we had our attention drawn to that submarine opening the hatch, the killer seized upon an opportunity, taking us down with one fell strike. After this, we can assume Ace took Lotus's bracelet with him, as he already had it, and the ninth man's to escape through one of the doors number 9. That or he took the sub as a way out. Anyhow, Meisters, that's everything I have on why I think Ace is the killer, and the theory behind it as well, as opposed to some of my previous thinkings. If you think I missed anything, feel free to point it out. Just keep the information prevalent to our previous 4 playthroughs, and don't spoil the following 2. I would love to hear your theories and thoughts on the topic as well. Feel free to leave those in the comments below. Now, Meisters, this is my first time making a theory video. If you did enjoy this, and you would like to see more of this type of video, or even more topics like this discussed during my regular videos, do leave a comment below letting me know. And as always, if you did enjoy the video, please do leave a like to show your support on the topic. And as always, if you haven't joined the Academy, do so now for more Shinigami shenanigans just like today's. Anyhow, Meisters, I would like to thank you for tuning in for this long video of rants, theories, and harebrained schemes. And as always, we will see you next time in our following video. In this case, it would be another episode of 999, where we hopefully don't get stabbed in the back yet again, or asked a question, and maybe not left in a room to die. That would be nice.